Now, there is an interesting story behind the discovery of gibberellins. Gibberellins were discovered in Japan. There is a fungus known as Gibberella fujikuri, which leads to foolish back-end disease in rice seedlings. Now, what is foolish back-end seedling disease? There would be, you have seen rice fields, if ever you have seen in your life, you must be knowing that the monocotyledonous plants, they are not higher than your knee length, or they would be at least till your waist. That much length they are going to 2 to 3 feet. That would be the height of the plant. And when we talk about rice, it is also having the same 2 to 3 feet height. Now, in case of foolish back-end seedling disease of rice, the plant happens to be infected by a fungi known as Gibberella fujikuri, and what happens in that plant, it grows up to the height of 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet. So you would find an abnormally grown, abnormally high, tall, in fact very tall plant in a normal field. So that particular thing was of interest to few scientists, and they studied that the fungus responsible for this particular disease is Gibberella fujikuri, and from there they isolated GA3, gibberellic acid 3. The first gibberellic acid to be separated was GA3, and it is most extensively used even nowadays. Now, this gibberellins happen to be the second most important growth hormone, pardon me. These are named after the fungi that we just talked about, that foolish back-end seedling disease, and they are also synthesized in apical portion of stems and roots. Along with auxins, they are responsible for bringing about the apical growth, not just apical but lateral also. This is not only responsible for apical growth. Now, there are more than 60 types of gibberellins which have been discovered, but most extensively used one is GA3, and we do name them in the process GA1, GA2, GA3, like this and so on. So there are 60 hormones, almost 60 hormones which have been extracted from the plants. And what is their site of action and what is their action, that we need to understand. When we talk about the function of gibberellins, because we discussed that foolish back-end seedling disease was that the plant was abnormally tall. So basically this particular hormone is responsible for elongation of the stem. Alright, because it is responsible for growth, it is present in stem apex and otherwise also the apical buds, axial buds, it is going to be found over there. So it is responsible for stem elongation. It is of great importance to the horticulturist. Why? Because the seed germination and seedling growth is also brought when there is higher concentration of GA and GA1, 2, 3 or whichever is required. And one more important thing that these hormones are responsible for, seedling growth is brought when the seed dormancy is broken. So gibberellins are responsible for breaking of the seed dormancy as well. We discussed what seed dormancy is. That is the state in which the seed has given up its metabolic activities and is waiting for the conditions to resume, favorable conditions to resume, and for breaking that seed dormancy, gibberellins are required. Now, they promote bolting and flowering in long day and cold requirement. Now, what is bolting? Bolting is basically long stem elongation. Now, if I subject a cauliflower, you know that cabbage basically, you see cabbage is what? Cabbage is all the leaves they are concentrated at one side. That means the stem elongation is not brought together. Okay, cabbage is the common vegetable that we consume. So if the cabbage is subjected to the gibberellins, you would find an entire plant with all the leaves which were present together, they would be gone and stem elongation would have taken place. So that is bolting, and flowering is brought when plant is subjected to gibberellins, and they do favor flowering and sex expression in the plants. When I say sex expression, when the plant is subjected to the gibberellins, it is going to see more of male flowers coming into the scene. Alright, so gibberellins have the function of stem elongation, seed germination, breaking of seed dormancy, promotion of bolting and flowering, and the flowering and sex expression which is to be seen in the plants. This is the function of gibberellins. Now, next hormone that we deal with is cytokinins, but before we come to cytokinins, you need to revise the things which are to be remembered in the gibberellins. First thing that you need to remember is where they are located. They are located in root apices and stem apices basically. What is their function? That is most important function is stem elongation. One thing you need to remember is how it can be remembered that they are very crucial in stem elongation, because from where they were discovered, the plant had shown abnormal stem elongation. That was in case of the rice plants. From where it was extracted for the first time, it was extracted from Gibberella fugiculae fungi, which is responsible for that abnormally growing tall plants inside in the rice fields. And which is the most extensively used gibberellin? That is GA3. These things you need to remember in case of gibberellins. Now we come to the next hormone, that is cytokinins. Now cytokinesis, if you remember, there is a term that is involved with cell division, cytokinesis, and these hormones, cytokinins, are also responsible for cell division. See, over here we talk about cytokinins. The most extensively used cytokinins are zeatins. They occur naturally in form of zeatin, and this was first discovered, the cytokinins were first discovered in herring sperm DNA. Herring is a fish, and from its sperm DNA it was isolated that cytokinins are present, and you would find a lot of cytokinins in the coconut milk, basically because a lot of cytokinesis is taking place over there. Now what is cytokinesis? Cytokinesis is involved in the cell division. Whenever cytokinesis would take place, you would get two new cells from an original cell. So these group of hormones, all these organic compounds, they stimulate cytokinesis, and whenever there is lot of cytokinesis, there would be some sort of enlargement. If I am talking about enlargement, if I have to measure that growth, it would be in terms of area. So basically these hormones would be responsible for growth, okay, not just the apical growth. We did study the earlier hormones, they were responsible for apical growth, vertical growth. Now this hormone would be responsible for lateral growth as well, because we see enlargement, okay, and we see that this hormone, because it brings into the scene new cells every time, wherever it would be present, it is going to promote cytokinesis. So the process of aging would also be declined in the presence of this hormone, okay. So if we have to bring a total and holistic growth of a plant, we need to provide auxins, gibberellins and cytokinins in totality to the plant. Now the structure is very simple. It is cytokinin, it is the derivative of adenine. Adenine is an organic compound, its derivative is cytokinins. They occur naturally in the form of zeatin, and artificially the cytokinin which is synthesized is known as kinetin. We did discuss that they stimulate cell division, so basically they would be resulting in the formation of new organs and new cells, okay, and they stimulate the growth of cell in tissue culture. So this hormone is also very important for those who perform the function of micropropagation and tissue culture, where they are producing new plants by just taking the single tissue from a plant and then giving rise to new plantlets. And other one is influence shedding of leaves, because we discussed that they are not going to bring aging to the plants, so they are going to give rise to new organs. So basically the shedding of the leaves would decline in the presence of this particular hormone. Seed germination, along with gibberellins, when the dormancy is broken, the seed has to divide rampantly, so that seed germination would be brought about these cytokinins only, brought about by cytokinins, and they do perform an important function of the slow deterioration process. They slow down the deterioration process, okay. So one thing that you have to remember, in any case cytokinins are important for cell division, and secondly they are going to, because they are involved in cell division, so they are going to play an important role in delaying the senescence of the plant. What is senescence? We get to know in subsequent lectures, but for now all you need to know is that cytokinins do not let the plant organ or the total plant die early. So they are responsible for maintenance of the plant structure as well. They stimulate morphogenesis. What is morphogenesis? Morphogenesis means the formation of the organs. Plant meristem gives rise to the simple cells. Those cells have to differentiate into different organs, so that would be stimulated by the group of organic compounds which are classified under cytokinins. They lead to bud formation. And all this would take place at a very fast pace if we are considering tissue culture. not just tissue culture, even in the live plants, the morphogenesis which has to take place would be occurring in the presence of natural cytokinins. Now they stimulate the growth of lateral buds. Now over here, please pay attention, as it is stimulating the growth of lateral buds, that means it is antagonistic to auxins, because auxins promote apical dominance. They are going to promote lateral bud growth. So that is why they are antagonistic to each other. They stimulate leaf expansion. Why leaf expansion would take place? Because they are enabling cell enlargement. How they are enabling cell enlargement? They are allowing the cell to divide. Then they can slow down the aging of some plant organs, we have discussed it. And last one is the slow deterioration of leaves on intact plants. That is also one function of cytokinins. Now next we are going to deal with very important hormone, which is a stress hormone in case of plants, and that is known as abscisic acid. Okay, as the name suggests, this is stress hormone. Now whenever there is a condition of stress in plants, stress conditions, what would be stress conditions? Those conditions where whatever factors are necessary for plant growth, they are not present in abundance. That means the factors responsible for plant growth, like water, like carbon dioxide, if they are not present in their abundance, as much critical concentration is not present, what would the plant do in such condition? It would undergo such physiological changes in order to overcome that stress. So the particular group of compounds which are responsible for helping the plant to cope up with those situations, they are termed under the stress hormone, and it is known as abscisic acid. Okay, abscisic acid is very important for the plant, because it somehow helps the plant to cope up with the stress. It somehow helps in very important activities of the plant, like the process of dormancy is governed by this particular hormone. The process of abscission, where the plant gets rid of its unwanted organs, those which have undergone senescence, they would be with the help of abscisic acid. So abscisic acid, earlier, as the name suggests, it has something to do with abscission. What is abscission? Abscission is falling down of the leaves or the fruit which have ripened. So it was thought to be the cause of abscission of the fruits, and it can be transported in xylem and phloem, thus move up and down the stem. As we did in case of auxins, the flow was unidirectional. Over here, the flow would be bidirectional, because it is transported in both xylem and phloem. It can be transported in both the cases, and its production is initiated by stresses. Whenever there is a stress, whenever the stressful condition is present, abscisic acid would be formed inside the plant. Alright, then it would lead to the conditions like supposedly the plant is not having enough water, or there is a lot of water loss which has taken inside the plant. So what would happen? Abscisic acid would come into the scenario. It would lead to closure of stomata. So abscisic acid somehow managed to provide the plant such a condition so that it can just get rid of that stress. It can avoid that stress. That is why its production is initiated in stressful conditions. Now let's see what are the functions of abscisic acid. See, first of all, it inhibits growth. Okay, till now we had done 3 hormones which were important for growth. They were stimulating growth. Wherever we talked about, whether we talked about auxins, whether we talked about gibberellins, whether we talked about cytokinins, they were again and again talking about they stimulate the cell growth. We had one thing in common in everything, that one would stimulate the stem elongation, that is also responsible because cell growth has taken place. Now other would say that there would be lateral growth development, that would also be possible because the cell growth has taken place. So the first 3 group of hormones, they are having positive impact on the growth. Okay, this hormone does not have a positive impact on growth, rather it inhibits the growth, and it inhibits the growth in response to stressful conditions. It does not come and inhibit the growth as such. Whenever there is stressful condition, like they have given that there is change in temperature, there is change in light, then this hormone would be produced more and more so that plant can cope up with that stress. Seasonal changes especially, okay. It maintains dormancy in leaf, buds and seeds so that they do not germinate in unfavorable conditions. When the conditions would be favorable, they would germinate, okay. Then the abscisic acid graph would come down because it would be used up in the form of other metabolites. But for the situation where the conditions are unfavorable, abscisic acid would be high in those particular organs of the plant. Dormant plants are less vulnerable to damage. That is why abscisic acid is synthesized in those plants where the favorable conditions are not present. That means stressful conditions are there. Then we did discuss that it is responsible for closing of stomata in dry conditions so that lesser water loss would take place. Okay, then it is also responsible for abscission of the leaves. The abscission layer is formed between the leaves where ethylene comes and stops the functioning of cytokinins over there. Okay, supposedly I'm talking about abscission of the leaf. I would we have a topic specially denoted to abscission where we talk about how leaf abscission takes place. See over here, a layer is being formed, abscission layer is being formed over here, from where ethylene works more and more, and it does not allow cytokinins for cell enlargement and addition of new cells. So basically this leaf gets old and it falls down, and that abscission layer is formed with this abscisic acid only. Then they say that dry leaves would wilt in the production of ABA, which is again related to water stress. So main function of abscisic acid is helping the plant to cope up with the stressful conditions so that it does not have the physical abiotic factors impacting its growth basically. Okay, and there are commercial uses which are mentioned over here, that the plants which have to be shipped to longer distance journeys, and supposedly you are asking for a particular fruit or a plant from the South American continent, it has to be shipped in greater quantities with ships, and it takes 2 to 3 months to reach you. So they would be given abscisic acid so that they enter the stage of dormancy, because this hormone is responsible for bringing dormancy to the plants. And last hormone that we deal with is ethylene. Okay, ethylene is, if you can't remember anything about ethylene, do remember that this hormone is responsible for ripening of the fruits. Along with abscisic acid, these two hormones, basically it is this hormone which brings more and more aging in the plant. It is not abscisic acid. We often confuse that abscisic acid is the most notorious hormone. That is not so. It is the ethylene which is more notorious as compared to abscisic acid. Rather, abscisic acid is helpful to the plant. Okay, ethylene is not that helpful, but because it is of great importance to the fruit industry, so we do study what ethylene and its functions are. Ethylene, you know, I need not to tell you, it is the chemical structure of ethylene, you must be knowing, all of you. It is a gaseous hormone. So supposedly you have kept one, you have heard of the story where we say that one rotten apple is responsible for rotting of the entire apple lot. That is because of ethylene. That rotten apple which has undergone a lot of ripening would release ethylene. Ethylene being gaseous hormone, it would diffuse into other apples and they would also start rotting, they would get ripened up. Or supposedly you have some raw fruit with you, so it is advised that put a completely ripened banana inside that fruit so that it gets ripened easily, because that ripened fruit releases ethylene. Ethylene is gaseous, it would be absorbed by the other fruits and they would ripen as well. So it is gaseous in form and diffuses rapidly. This is what we had talked about, and it would affect the other plant. Okay, now what are the functions of ethylene? First thing you need to know, fruit ripening, very simple. Epinasty. Now what is epinasty? You need to see, epinasty is the condition where the leaves would show, supposedly this is the tip of the plant, okay, this is the shoot apex and this is the plant I am drawing. It would fold like this, okay, this would be the condition. Curling, simply if I have to say, it is curling, that is the downward curvature of the leaves would be present, okay. That epinasty would be promoted by ethylene. Now next is, it encourages senescence and abscission. Now the hormone that we said that was responsible, abscisic acid, abscission comes when there is senescence, and who has encouraged senescence? Ethylene has encouraged senescence, okay. Senescence would be brought about by it would be brought about by ethylene, and once the senescence has taken place, abscisic acid would come into the scenario. It would develop that abscission layer. Ethylene would stop the cytokinins from reaching those dried up parts or the senescent parts, and it would be shed off by the process of abscission. So this hormone is basically responsible for senescence, and they are responsible for stem elongation as well. Alright, stem elongation and bud development. When the stem has to get elongated, ethylene along with gibberellins can work for the stem elongation and bud development. Now in case of flowering, it inhibits flowering, okay? It does inhibit flowering and it promotes flowering in plants like pineapple and mango. Whenever it is about flowering in pineapple and mango, means in fruit trees which are economically important, it does have economical importance because it would bring about flowering in many fruit trees. So the process of flowering would be encouraged by ethylene, which is also a function of gibberellins. And in case of sex expression, when we say sex expression of the flowers, whenever a flower is treated with a particular organic compound, say a hormone, it could be gibberellins or it could be ethylene, that plant shows an expression, either it becomes male or it becomes female, okay. So that is basically sex expression. And in case of cucumber buds, if they are treated with ethylene, they would become females. And when the gibberellins are treated, they would become male flowers. So somehow this hormone acts antagonistically to gibberellins. This thing you have to remember. So while gibberellin brings male expression in the flowers, ethylene is responsible for female expression in the flowers. So you see that each and every organic compound is having some or other crucial importance, which is very much important for plant growth in total. So these all are the plant growth regulators which regulate the growth of plant. Either they inhibit the growth or they stimulate the growth, or they bring about various processes like abscission, senescence and other processes which are involved, closing of stomata, lateral bud expansion. All these processes are conducted and properly managed in the presence of these particular compounds, and they have an important role. Their role in growth is very, very important. That is why they are known as plant growth regulators. Thank you.